Hello and welcome to this British Council IELTS video. My name is Sarah, and like my colleagues presenting the other videos, I'm an IELTS teacher and teacher trainer. The purpose of this video is to help you to get the most out of the academic writing self-study program. So you'll need to download this program and perhaps print it out so you can have it by you. You'll also need a pen or pencil and some paper, as I'll be asking you some questions during the video. If you haven't got the program or a pen and paper, pause the video and get them ready so you have them by you as we go through this video. Right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through the self-study program for academic writing task 1 so you can see how it develops and what you need to do. We'll do the same for academic writing task 2. We'll look at some top tips for helping you to improve your writing, and then we'll very briefly summarise what we've looked at. But first, let's look at what a typical day looks like. Okay, so this is, happens to be day 3. So both self-study programs, Writing Task 1 and Writing Task 2, are divided into 5 days. But you can organise how much you do and when according to your own needs and your situation at home. And of course, bearing in mind the advice you were given in the How to Self-Study video. So thinking about the timing, the place, setting yourself good targets, achievable targets, rewarding yourself after successfully doing something, and perhaps communicating what you're doing with somebody else. Each day, there will be a brief description of that day's focus, and then there'll be a series of practice activities. All of the links are in your pack, so you just put your pack on screen and click, and you go straight to this particular exercise. And then usually there is the possibility to do a task based on the advice and based on the practice that you've been going through during that particular day. So let's start with academic writing task 1. So the focus of writing task 1, day 1, is making sure that you know about the test and that you understand how the test is marked. Knowing about the test, what it consists of, the format, and being comfortable with it will help you feel more confident. And knowing how the test is marked will help you in analysing your own work and understanding what the examiner is looking for from you. For example, here is some basic information about the writing test. And this is the website again, it's in your pack, that you can go to for more information. So this is just information that gives an overview. So there are 2 tasks, you have an hour. Task 1, you have to describe visual information, which we'll look at in more depth in a minute. And in task 2, you write an essay responding to a point of view or an argument or a problem. Okay. And it gives you a little bit more information about how to answer, so full sentences, no notes, no bullet points. But there's a lot more information on this site, IELTS.org, so do go there and read this carefully. Good reading practice as well. Okay, so on day 2, you'll find out about your current level of English. It's quite important for you to know where you're starting from. So there's a link there for you to do a test that'll give you a guide to your current language level. Then we'll move into the actual writing task 1, which is describing charts, for example, and there'll be grammar and vocabulary practice for that. And then at the end of day 2, there'll be a practice task for you to do and a chance for you to analyse it, see what you've done well and see where you can improve. So let's have a look at if you like, a typical task 1. Okay, so you have a line graph, you have the instructions, and you have the sources there, but of course that's in your pack. That's where you go to get this particular test. Okay, I'm going to give you a little test, so I hope you've got that piece of paper and a pen or pencil. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to write down 3 verbs, 3 nouns, 3 adverbs, and 3 adjectives that you could use to describe this graph. And your 30 seconds starts now. Right, how did you do? Here are my words. So the verbs are things like rise, grow, increase. Nouns, fall, drop, decrease. Adverbs, slightly, rapidly, slowly. Adjectives, gradual, strong, sharp. I mean, these are, you've probably got different words, but these are some of the sort of basic and most useful words that you can use. And remember, for all of these, you've got twice the value. So although you've got the verb rise, you can also have arise, a noun. You've got the verb grow, but you can have a growth. For the adverbs, obviously slightly can become an adjective, slight, and equally the adjectives like gradual can become adverbs by adding ly, gradually. So you've got quite a lot of vocabulary there already. On day 3, you'll be looking at process diagrams. So in day 2, you were looking at line graphs, and now we're looking at process diagrams, which is another type of diagram that you'll have in task 1. We'll be looking at the vocabulary, and again, once you've done all the practice, there'll be a process diagram practice for you to do. And here's the example of the sort of grammar exercise that you'll be able to do. The passive is used for describing processes, so it's really important you know how to form it and how to use it. So if you like a bit more practice, there's plenty of practice in the pack for you to do on this. Remember, you can pause this video at any time if you want to spend a little bit more time reading the slide. Okay. On day 4, we'll be looking at maps. Again, it's another very typical type of task 1 diagram. So we'll be looking at 2 map questions and looking at the grammar for comparing maps, because with all of these tasks, you will be asked to make comparisons where appropriate. And obviously, if you've got 2 maps, perhaps one of a place in, I don't know, 2000 and one in a place of the same place in 2020, you'll be asked to compare what's changed, what's stayed the same, what's got smaller, what's got bigger, etc. So there'll be grammar practice there for you for making those comparisons and contrasts. And lastly, on day 5, there'll be a pulling together, if you like, of the writing about line graphs, bar charts, process diagrams. So further practice of all of these, and a chance to write another task, and then some help on how to analyse and correct your work. The sort of things that you should be looking out for that you can improve yourself. Okay, so that was a brief overview of the pack on writing task 1. Now let's look at academic writing task 2, also in your pack. Okay, so I'm sure you remember that this is an essay, a minimum of 250 words. There's no maximum, remember, but Often about 280 words is about right, but a minimum of 250. And you're advised to spend about 40 minutes on writing task 2. So 20 minutes on writing task 1, 40 minutes on writing task 2. Again, there's a sort of 5-day program, but obviously again, I repeat, you can organize your time according to your own situation. And each day again has a different focus. And so day 1 of writing task 2 is again knowing all about writing task 2, so you feel really familiar and comfortable with what you're going to have to do. Doing a practice task 2, so writing an essay, and then using the criteria, the public descriptors, which are also here in your pack, to analyse your own answer. Again, to see what you do well, what perhaps you need to work on. On day 2, it's really looking more on how the test is marked. So looking at the criteria that the examiner uses to mark your work, and looking particularly at coherence and cohesion. So coherence is how logical the organization of your essay is overall, from the introduction to the body paragraph to the conclusion. That's coherence. Cohesion is the way that you link your ideas in your sentences and in your paragraphs. So it's using the words like despite, whereas, however, for example, etc. So work on those linking devices as well. And you're also going to do some work on trying to build your academic vocabulary. So the sort of vocabulary you will need to use in these essays. So here's an example of the sort of vocabulary exercise you can do using the academic word list. And again, remember, all these links are in your program. You can just click on them and go. A tip though, when you're doing these sort of vocabulary exercises and you're making notes of any new vocabulary you think will be useful, do mark the stress on the words, the strong sound, the strong syllable. In that way, you'll be able to say the word correctly as well as spell it and use it in your writing. And that could well be useful in your speaking test. Have a try now. Here are some words. I'm going to give you 10 seconds and I'd like you to just practice saying them to yourself, using the stress in red to make sure you get the pronunciation right. So I'll give you 10 seconds starting now to say these 5 words. Okay, I'm going to say them and you can listen and think about whether you said them in the same way. So economy, economics, economist, economic, economical. Did you say them in the same way? I'm sure you did. Okay, let's move on to day 3. Oh, sorry. Yes, try saying these words loud with the correct stress. Well, you've just done that. We can always do it for a second time. Okay, so day 3. This is looking at another one of the assessment criteria. So grammatical range and accuracy, one of the 4. And so looking at improving your grammar for writing task 2, and then again a practice writing a task 2 essay. And here's an example of writing task 2. So a person's worth nowadays seems to be judged according to social status and material possessions. Old-fashioned values such as honour, kindness and trust no longer seem important. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? So that's your subject. You've only got one question. There is no choice. and you have to answer that. So as you can see, there are, if you like, 3-point sides to this. There's, you know, how much you agree and how much you disagree, and what is your overall opinion. On balance, do you think this is true or not true? And as we've said before, you have to write 250 words. Okay, day 4. So this is looking at another of those assessment criteria, and that's your lexical resource, in other words, your vocabulary. And it's also looking at, again, cohesion. Remember, we talked earlier about cohesion being using linking words, like despite, although, however, for example, to show the reader where your ideas are going. But you can also link your work by using pronouns. And so there'll be work on how to do that. And also the one thing where for my students, they often find one of the most difficult things is how to find ideas. You go into the test, you've got a topic that perhaps you haven't thought about very much, and you've got 40 minutes to write your essay, and you've got to come up with some ideas to write about. And so on day 4, you'll be looking at that. You're looking at how you can brainstorm, how you can quickly make notes that you can use for writing your essay. So 3 very important focuses on day 4. Let's have a look at an example exercise from the IELTS Prep app on using pronouns. So there are 2 sentences at the top. The people in the north are much friendlier than the in the south. The car was old, but worked well. So we're looking at using pronouns rather than repeating the noun. I'm just going to give you about 5 seconds to think what the answers are to those. Did you get them? The people in the north are much friendlier than the ones in the south. Ones instead of people. And the car was old, but it worked well. So it instead of repeating the car. Now you have a try with these. Okay, read sentence 1, and while you're reading it, think about what it refers to. Then read sentence number 2 and think about what which refers to. And again, what does these refer to in sentence 2? Again, I'm going to give you 10 seconds, 15 seconds to quietly read those sentences again and work out what it, which, and these refer to. Okay, well, I hope you found the answers. So it refers to Skylab. So Skylab was the first space station launched into orbit around the Earth. You could say Skylab was designed to make observations, but it is better. And in number 2, in total, there were 3 Skylab missions during which, so which refers to these missions. So you could say in total, there were 3 Skylab missions during the 3 missions, which is just clumsy and repetitive. And the last one, these, refers to the experiments or the many experiments. So using pronouns means you avoid repetition, and that's quite important. So lots of practice on doing that sort of thing that you can apply to your writing. Okay, and lastly, day 5. Again, this time the focus is on practicing writing a timed task 2 essay. So doing it, if you like, under exam conditions. So you need to make sure that you're going to have 40 minutes of undisturbed time to do this. And then there is advice and a checklist on how to analyse your essay and work out what you're doing well and what you could do perhaps a bit more work on. I'd also advise that if you're taking the paper-based test, that you actually practice writing the essay by hand on paper, just so you get used to what it's like spending, 30 minutes writing an essay by hand. Because I don't know if you're like me, but I write so little by hand these days, everything is typed up. Obviously, if you're going to do the computer delivered test, you can just type your essay straight onto a Word document or something. For those of you who are writing it out on paper, what I would do is advise once you've finished is that you type it up onto the computer, so you have a document on your computer, and then both whether you're a computer delivered person or a paper-based person, use the spell checkers and the grammar checkers to correct or look at your work and make a note of the typical mistakes that you make. Do you forget to use the third person S? Do you sometimes forget capital letters on languages or nationalities or months of the year or something like that? So use the spell checkers and the grammar checkers and make a note of your typical essays, and then really focus when you write your next essay on avoiding those mistakes or being able to correct them. Okay, so let's look at some top tips for writing. Now, the first one might strike you as strange, but it's to read. The more you read, the more vocabulary you will meet, and you'll become familiar with different styles of writing. All of this is really useful. Record your vocabulary, the new vocabulary. Record perhaps a translation, but also how it's used. And of course, remember to mark the stress syllable so that you can use that word when you're speaking in the speaking test. Be critical of your own writing. Try and ask yourself what spelling or grammar mistakes you often make. And as I just said, use the spell checkers and grammar checkers so that you can see the mistakes. So if there's a word that you spell incorrectly often, make a note, write it down, write down the correct spelling and try and learn that. For example, many of my students, because I teach in France, spell environment wrong. And every single time they put an extra E in it. So getting them to write it down, cross out that extra E, write down the correct spelling, really does improve their writing. And you can do that for yourself. And lastly, use the public band descriptors. They're in your pack as well from day one to analyse your essays for both task 1 and task 2. Look for what the examiner is looking for from you. An example would be a clear overview for task 1, which you have to write in order to get a band 7. Ask yourself, did you write your position clearly, your opinion clearly in the task 2 essay? Again, that's something you have to do to get a band 7 and higher. So do use the public band descriptors. They will help you to improve your writing. Finally, let's look at what we've looked at, a very brief summary. So over this video and in your pack, we've looked at understanding task 1, how it's assessed, and done a lot of work on the vocabulary and grammar you will need for task 1, and lots of writing practice for task 1. And the same thing is in your self-study program for task 2. It's making sure you understand it, how it's assessed, lots of appropriate vocabulary and grammar practice that you will need in that essay. And again, practice and timed practices of writing those essays. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. I really hope it'll make using your self-study program much easier. And of course, I wish you the very, very best of luck in the test. when you take it. Good luck.